John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. We have always tackled issues on this program that often escape coverage of traditional media, and tonight is no exception. Why would a young Jewish man from Los Angeles, 18 years old, give up a cushy life and suddenly join the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, fighting against Hamas, Hezbollah, and others that would like to see the state of Israel wiped off the map? Tonight, we're joined by Sergeant A. That's going to be the name we're going to use tonight, to tell us about his dramatic decision, choosing service over self. And we're protecting his identity for obvious reasons, but his story needs to be told. Sergeant A, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You are where right now? You are in a compound with your fellow soldiers?
I am in my room right now where I live. It's a lone soldier house. A lone soldier is a soldier in the Israeli army who does not have very close contact to his family. So there are people from outside of Israel, like me, from other countries who kind of left their family to join the army. And there are Israelis who don't have too much of a connection with their families. So this house was built to give them everything they need. This place was made specifically for people like me. They give us a place to live. They give us food. They give us great conditions. It's an amazing place.
Sergeant A, I'm so curious about how you got involved in the IDF. You grew up Orthodox Jew in Los Angeles?
Yeah, Modern-Orthodox, correct.
Modern-Orthodox. When did it first kind of come to your sense of your heritage and your duty to join the IDF? When did that kind of take shape? Because you were 18 years old when you made that decision. What led up to it and what caused you to join as an American?
Well, it was kind of a decision that I debated my whole life, ever since I was a child, because my family has I have a lot of aunts, cousins. My grandfather lived in Israel, and so we would always fly here throughout the summers when I was a child to come visit them. And so since a young age, I fell in love with the country, and I would see all the soldiers walking around the streets because there are so many soldiers everywhere that I just, when I was young, I thought, wow, when I grow up, I want to be like them. But then I went back to America, and I kind of forgot about it because there was a long period where I didn't go back to Israel. I didn't go to travel there, and I kind of just, fell in love with the American culture. I wanted to go to a university, go to business school, start my life. I was in love with the entrepreneurial lifestyle. I even tried starting my own business, starting my own company, and then it was only around the end of high school when I made the decision, because in my high school there's this senior trip, the final trip of our high school. We go to Poland and then Israel. In Poland, we see the dark times, we see our past, we see the suffering, and then in Israel, we see the light, we see the present and how we've overcome our past tragedies to create a better future for our nation. And so when I was in Poland, we went to every Holocaust site. Not every, but a lot of the Holocaust sites. We went to many concentration camps. We went to Auschwitz, we went to Treblinka, we went to mass graveyards. We got to see the history for sure there. And then from there, we jumped to Israel, where we could see our nation thriving at that time. We could see the beautiful land. We could just enjoy Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, all the wonders of Israel. And on that trip, I made the decision to join the army for two reasons, basically. I went back to my childhood dreams of joining the army because, on the one hand, I was an Israeli citizen since I think when I was 16, I got my citizenship. And
so you're a dual citizen.
Yes, sir. And as an Israeli, the army is a mandatory draft. Everyone who turns 18 here after high school, they can do a program to get ready for the army for a year, 2 years, get ready. But at some point, they must draft, with some exceptions, but for the most part. So I felt because I was an Israeli citizen, how am I special that I don't get the draft? All my cousins, all my friends that I would meet from Israel, they're all drafted. Like, who am I not to draft to join the army? That was one perspective that I felt like it was my duty as an Israeli to draft.
Yes, yes.
And
And
then
that was the kind of the turning point. You saw others joining. Now this is all pre-October 7th, right?
well, yes, but that's one side. That's the Israeli side of me. But then there's the Jewish side of me because the Jewish side of me saw when I was in Poland, when I was at all these concentration camps, all these mass graveyards. I I could feel that anti-Semitism wasn't, even though we weren't in a Holocaust time, it's anti-Semitism was all over the world. It was ongoing. It's never stopped, and I could see that there would be a war in the future in Israel, and I didn't want to be in some university, just legs on the couch, drinking a beer, watching a football game with my friends. I wanted to be on the front lines doing as much as I can to protect the Jewish people.
Now,
And
I've got to ask you, because you and I have a mutual friend.
right,
And that friend told me that he would not have expected you to make that decision, but you did.
really,
Yes.
okay,
That's a heavy decision for an 18-year-old. Now, obviously, we have kids in this country who join, but that is not a fight you had to fight. But
I feel like I did have to fight it.
you did.
Yeah, I couldn't see myself sitting at home with my just watching a football game with a beer in my hand while other Jews are dying for our freedom as a people. I felt like I had to be part of that struggle. If anyone was going to be in Gaza, I wanted it to be me.
Now, after high school, most young Israelis serve in the military for 32 months, women for 24. You get in there, and this is a whole new world to you, having grown up in LA and a pretty nice lifestyle. What was the biggest shock going through the training and kind of realizing this is going to be life for a couple of years?
The language definitely, because even though I went to a Jewish school, I didn't really learn Hebrew. I learned how to read and write, but I didn't learn how to converse. And there are different units in the army. Some units have more English speakers, more Americans. My unit definitely did not have a lot of Americans. A lot of Mizrahi Israelim. Mizrahi, it's very Eastern Israelis, so don't speak English too much, and that really helped me, I guess, because I didn't speak English. I was forced to learn language, but the language was the biggest barrier. And the training itself, I loved it. I loved the fitness. I loved working out. I loved the long treks that we would do in the desert through the sandy hills. It was tough. It was very tough, but I knew I was there for a purpose, so it
Yeah.
gave me more energy, more
Well,
motivation.
and you, as I understand it, have taken to it, for lack of a better term, like a duck to water. As I understand it, you've now elevated to a pretty elite sharpshooter in the IDF, correct?
Correct. I'm a sniper in the IDF.
Did you have any idea you had that skill?
I knew from the first day when I got to my unit that I wanted to be one. I told my commander the day that I met him that I want to be a sniper in the IDF, but it's not like I just tell him that and he signs me up. There's certain things you need to pass, certain tests, certain trials, certain interviews. I knew that I wanted it. It was my dream since I was a kid if I wanted to go to the army, but it's just something I had to work for a little bit.
Can you describe now as a sharpshooter in the IDF? Because we have seen some very intense fighting that you've been involved in Rafah, in Gaza. It's been pretty hot for the last half a year. Have you ever seen the movie American Sniper?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so you know that scene where he's trying to figure out whether that child crossing the street is a friend or foe, if he's a little boy or if he's an enemy. You have to have encountered situations like this.
Correct. And I don't want to get too much into our actual day to day in Gaza. I just anyone that we have actually taken the decision to encounter with is a terrorist. We care very much about making that decision. We spend a lot of time in making that decision to figure out if they're terrorists or civilians, and we wait until we have the final answer.
When you've gone through situations like this, do you feel like it has profoundly changed you as a person?
In what way?
That the kid who grew up in California is maybe still there, but he's in the background.
Honestly, I feel like I'm the same person. I feel like this was always a part of me. I feel like this part of me was kind of in the background before, and now I've kind of let it out because I've
Wow.
had both of both of my parents, their family has originally come from Israel, and so being coming out of America, both of my parents are their families aren't from America originally, so coming out of America and coming to Israel, going into war in Gaza, being part of the army, just like all of my grandparents who were in the Israeli army, I feel like I'm kind of unleashing my background, if you understand.
Yes, I do. I do. Before we go to break, and we're going to talk about October 7th on the backside, can you just size up what that meant as you were over there in the IDF and then October 7th happens? How did that affect you?
Well, at the time I was in the middle of training. I was at home actually on October 7th. We went home for the weekend, and just like every Israeli, it was a celebratory night. It was the night of Simchat Torah. It's a big holiday in the Jewish tradition where we like to celebrate where we celebrate the finishing of the reading of the Bible. Every year we read the Bible in one rotation. Not only that, it was also my friend's birthday. We went out, we had a good time. And then in the morning, like every Israeli, I woke up to a million notifications in my phone. My commander called me, my religious commander. I was confused why he was calling me on Shabbat. Shabbat is Saturday. It's a
Yes.
Jewish weekly holiday. And I got the news of what was happening, and I didn't really think too much about it. I thought, this is what we trained for. It's happening. I didn't let my brain think about it. I just got to work, just like what we're trained to do. Something happens, you go figure out a solution, you go take care of it. I didn't think too much about it.
Sergeant A is our guest. He is a member of the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, and he has been in some pretty hairy places over there during his time as a sharpshooter, a sniper. We're going to be back, continue our discussion with Sergeant A. We're protecting his identity for obvious reasons. Back on Newsmaker. We're back on Newsmaker with Sergeant A, a young man at 18 who joined the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. The kid who grew up in Southern California in LA and finds himself on the battlefield. Agent A, when we left, we were talking about October 7th. When you started to see the horrific images of what was happening to your countrymen, because you're a dual citizen, what did you think?
Well, I know that we're surrounded by our enemies. I know that there are people who are out to destroy us at any moment. It took me by surprise, just like anyone in Israel. But on October 7th itself, I saw a good amount of the travesty that happened. I've been to the kibbutzim. I was there while there were bodies of our fellow citizens laying around there. I helped evacuate citizens, and I mean, there's not much that I thought about. It's just I've heard about what happened. I actually didn't hear about too much of what happened because at the time I was in training, so I wasn't allowed to have my phone on me. So I went to the kibbutzim knowing what was there, but I didn't know what was happening in the rest of the country because I came back to base, I got my phone for 15 minutes to tell my mom I'm okay. And then from there, they took my phone back and we just continued training. just getting ready for whatever was coming next.
Yeah, you're
Because-
going from training, though, into a hot war, for lack of a better term. I mean, you know at that
Right.
moment, you're no longer just training. You're going to be on the battlefield, and you have no idea what you're facing. How was that
Right.
mentally for you to prepare for
Well,
that?
I remember when I got back to base on October 7th, I heard what was happening. My friend gave me a ride to base, and then I got on the first bus out to where we needed to go. And I saw one of the soldiers, one of the fighters who finished training, who was sitting next to me, and he said, "You ready?" I said, "Of course." I mean, he said, he gave me a fist bump, and he said, "This is what we've been training for." Like, it's not something that we think too much about. It's just this is exactly what we train for. I mean, not exactly, but we train for hostile situations. We train for very intense situations with terrorists who are coming into our area. We're encountering them, and so we just knew what happened, and we were just on our way to take care of it. So I just knew my mission. I knew my duty. I knew what I needed to do. And talking to the soldiers who had finished training, he just said, "This is what we trained for. Let's go do it."
Do you feel at this stage, and again, we're talking to Sergeant A as we're identifying him. You're 20 years old now. You are a sniper with IDF. I mean, it would seem that Israel has completely turned this thing on its head. The leadership of Hamas has been largely taken out. What's left to do?
Honestly, I'm not sure. That's not really it's not my decision. It's not for me to know. They just tell me we're going to this area, we're doing this mission. It's on a very need to know basis.
This is a delicate one, but I'm going to ask you, have you had to kill people?
I don't like to talk about it, but when there are terrorists who need to be taken care of, that's our job.
You're just doing your job.
Exactly.
Does that profoundly change you?
No, that's what I was trained to do.
How do you feel having grown up in the U.S. where military service is voluntary? We haven't had a draft since Vietnam. How do you feel about the fact that Israel requires some level of military service from every man and woman? And do you think that that is wise in creating buy-in to sacrifice for country?
I very much like the idea of it from two standpoints. It creates a bond with the country, a bond like no other, because even from being outside of the country, I've walked miles and miles of Israel's deserts, Israel's forests, and I have a bond with the country that people who have joined the army, who haven't joined the army, just wouldn't have. And that's one standpoint. It just not just the training, also fighting for the country. It creates a bond with the country, and it creates a level of maturity. I've come to find that Israelis at a younger age are very mature people with a lot of intelligence, and that's because they go through such a difficulty at such a young age, going through training, going through wartime experiences, even before the war. I think it's a great opportunity for people to grow. I think the Army does great for people wherever they join, and so the fact that people must join the Army in Israel, it's good for the country, it's good for the people. I love the idea of it.
Your friends back in Los Angeles, who you grew up with, palled around with, let's say non-Jews, do they say to you, if you're in communication, you're doing what? Like, are they blown away with the turn your life has made?
Yes, in a sense, because they also grew up because I went to a Jewish school and I grew up in the Jewish community, a lot of my friends have the same upbringing as me and have maybe even wanted to join the Army in the past, but have come back from it and said, no, I'm not fit for it. So they understand the decision. It's just from the stories I tell them of my training and everything I've gone through, they they love the stories. I just recently went back to America a few months ago. Lone soldiers in the army from outside of Israel, they every year they get a month to go back to their home country to see their family, to see their friends. So I recently went back and I would hang out with my friends and talk to them and go over stories, and they loved it. They were having a great time hearing about everything we've done.
Final thing, there's been kind of this discussion about whether Israel has done enough to protect the innocent. That's been a big theme of this entire conflict in the American press. And then there are those who argue that Israel has done a remarkable job of trying to prevent civilian casualties. Would you like to just weigh in on that?
I mean, I don't love to talk politics, especially because that's not my role. My role is to just do what my mission is. All I can say is that when we get a mission, taking care of civilians is one of our priorities. That's it. For me, they give me my mission, I do my mission. If there's a civilian in the way, we make sure they're safe, and that's that.
So it is part of the mission to try to limit civilian, what is called callously, collateral damage.
Definitely that is part of our goal, to cause as little collateral damage as possible.
I appreciate you doing this, I really do. What have you learned?
Wow. From where? From training, from the war? Or all around?
Just internally, like as a person, what
I've
life
learned
lessons
that-
have you learned?
I've learned that there's no limit. There's nothing that I can't do. It's just there's just a mental block. Because there's this thing that we do in training, it's called a masa. A masa is like a trek. The first one you walk 3 kilometers, the next one 5 kilometers, the one after that 10 kilometers. And then you start doing it with stretchers. You do 10 kilometers and then 3 kilometers with a stretcher. You know, you go up and up, and each time you think, wow, that's so much. I'm going so far. But then you finish it, and you come back to base, you have a good meal, you go take a shower. And so every time it gets increasingly more difficult. There was 1 week of training where we walked some 130 kilometers from the south of Israel to the middle of Israel. And throughout, we were all saying, I don't know, either my legs are going to break or I don't know what's going to happen here. But it was a very challenging week. And at the end, we looked back on the track that we walked with our bags that were 80 pounds on our back, going throughout all of Israel, doing missions as we walked. We looked back saying, hey man, if I got through that, what's a 10-kilometer run going to do for me? What's a 20-kilometer run going to do for me? I just have to continue.
It's all relative.
You know? Exactly. It's just that I've really been taught the idea of, as long as I don't quit, as long as I keep pushing, I'm going to get through it. There's a saying in Hebrew, there's an end for everything. It's said a little differently in Hebrew, but everything has an end. So whatever I go through, any difficult time, whether it's physically, mentally, whatever, I'm gonna get through it. If it means being 2 months in a wartime scenario in Gaza, I'm gonna get through. I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna see the end.
Sergeant A, when are you heading out to the battlefield? When do you head out to the battlefield again?
I'm not sure about that.
Not sure, but you're ready to go.
Of course, I'm always ready. Even when I'm outside of Gaza, even when I was back in America, I was actually waiting to go back because I wouldn't say I enjoy it, but I find it meaningful. And I find what we're doing there has a great impact, and I like contributing to that.
Sergeant A, thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Be well. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
We're back in a moment on Newsmaker. Thanks as always for joining us, and we will see you next week on Newsmaker.